Hello and welcome to English 9A Credit 2. This is Lesson 1 of Credit 2. Here you have your credit opener, Finding Common Ground. We're going to read that little excerpt in the box, and then you're going to do that little writing activity. From How to Connect and Find Common Ground in Any Situation, NBC News, 2017. When conversing with someone you don't agree with, find simple common ground to build connections and friendship. Instead of focusing on where you disagree, build on any subjects that can strengthen the relationship, such as types of food or a sport you both enjoy. Common ground provides a pathway of communication which leads to trust. In professional or formal gatherings, try talking about food, music, exercise, or entertainment. All these activities allow for common experience. Then when we find ourselves in conversations with others. By doing this, we build connectivity and trust. Okay, you'll see a box there, and you're going to write or draw about a time when you had to find common ground with someone else. What did you learn from the experience, and why is it important to be able to find common ground with another person? Okay, so use that spot. Make sure you pause this video throughout so that you can complete the activities that we're talking about. All right, for credit 2, here is a glossary list of your key terms. Make sure you go back to this page often when you come across a word you don't understand in the packet. You can come here and look for the definition. As always, we're going to do a little preview of what you're going to be doing at the end of credit 2. So your preview is that you are going to pretend that you were in the audience listening to Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address when he gave that speech. You're going to write a letter to a fellow citizen who was not there during the speech. Summarize the speech and describe your reactions. Include whether you think the speech was appropriate and effective for the occasion. So again, you're going to be writing a letter from the perspective of a person that was in the audience actually listening to Abraham Lincoln deliver the Gettysburg Address. So on that note, we are going to be reading the Gettysburg Address. There's also that QR code link for the virtual tutoring that you can use anytime. You can text or do chat boxes on the internet or call or email questions to that virtual tutoring. It's really simple and they're almost always available. Okay, here are our learning goals for Lesson 1. We're going to be looking at theme, central idea, and going back to more summarizing and paraphrasing like we did in Credit 1. You're going to evaluate arguments and counter-arguments as well in this credit. So going back to Credit 1 where we learned the difference between summarizing and paraphrasing, remember that a summary the goal of it is to condense the main idea of a text. You are going to use summaries when you're taking notes in a class or to help you remember what happened during a reading assignment. A summary is short, just remember that. When you are paraphrasing, your goal is to put someone else's ideas into your own words. So you can use synonyms, you can reword sentences, but you're keeping the content of what the author wrote the same, just putting it in your own words. You'll use that when you are writing an essay. It doesn't shorten the text, but it just puts the text into your own words. Okay, so remember that that is the difference. Okay, on this next page, we're going to practice summarizing versus paraphrasing. The first one is done for you. The text is, patriotism is love of a country, but you can't love your country without loving your countrymen and countrywomen. We don't always have to agree, but we must empower each other. We must find the common ground. We must build bridges across our differences to pursue our common good. And that was by Cory Booker, who's a U.S. Senator. So if we're going to summarize that, the example they give was, a real patriot not only loves his or her country, but other citizens and embraces them despite their differences. Okay, that's a short summary of what that quote was about. If you're going to paraphrase it, you change it up and put your own words. One cannot be a true patriot without loving all their fellow citizens. People do not always have to agree, but they must empower each other and find common ground, bringing their bridging their differences to help the greater good. Okay, so now you're going to do one on your own. We're going to summarize and paraphrase. The quote is, "Embrace a diversity of ideas. Embrace the fact that you can disagree with people and not be disagreeable. Embrace the fact that you can find common ground. If you disagree on 9 out of 10 things but can find common ground on that 10th, maybe you can make progress. If you can find common ground, you can accomplish great things." Okay, so I did a sample summary there. Disagreeing with someone does not mean you have to be rude. It's important to find common ground with others in order to make good things happen. Okay, that's a sample summary. You can come up with your own. And my sample paraphrase was, although you may disagree with someone on 9 out of 10 things, it's important to embrace our differences without being offensive. Know that you can find common ground with others, and when you find common ground, progress is made. On common ground, we can find great accomplishments. Okay, now we're going to start reading an article called the Gettysburg Address. Highlight or underline the key points in your packet that will help you write a short summary following each section of the article. For the first section, they've already done the underlining for you, which you see on this page. So after this paragraph, you are going to be writing a quick summary. Here we go, the Gettysburg Address. In November of 1863, President Abraham Lincoln was invited to deliver remarks which later became known as the Gettysburg Address at the official dedication ceremony for the National Cemetery of Gettysburg in Pennsylvania, on the site of one of the bloodiest and most decisive battles of the Civil War. Though he was not the featured orator that day, Lincoln's 273-word address would be remembered as one of the most important speeches in American history. In it, he invoked the principles of human equality contained in the Declaration of Independence and connected the sacrifices of the Civil War with the desire for a new birth of freedom, as well as the all-important preservation of the Union. Okay, so pause the video and write your summary of what I just read. And we're going to continue on. Remember to highlight as we go, and when deciding which points to highlight or underline, think of the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. That will help you with the summary when it comes to it. Okay, burying the dead at Gettysburg. From July 1st to July 3rd, 1863, the invading forces of General Robert E. Lee's Confederate Army clashed with the Army of the Potomac under its newly appointed leader, General George G. Meade, at Gettysburg, some 35 miles southwest of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Casualties were high on both sides. Out of roughly 170,000 Union and Confederate soldiers, there were 23,000 Union casualties, more than 1/4 of the Army's effective forces, and 28,000 Confederates killed, wounded, or missing, which was more than 1/3 of Lee's army. After 3 days of battle, Lee retreated towards Virginia. On the night of July 4th, it was a crushing defeat for the Confederacy, and a month later the great general would offer Confederate President Jefferson Davis his resignation. Davis refused to accept it. As after previous battles, thousands of Union soldiers killed at Gettysburg were quickly buried, many in poorly marked graves. In the months that followed, however, local attorney David Wills spearheaded efforts to create a national cemetery at Gettysburg. Wills and the Gettysburg Cemetery Commission originally set October 23rd as the date for the cemetery's dedication, but delayed it to mid-November after their choice for a speaker, Edward Everett, said he needed more time to prepare. Everett, the former president of Harvard College, former U.S. Senator, and former Secretary of State, was at the time one of the country's leading orators. On November 2nd, just weeks before the event, Willis extended an invitation to President Lincoln, asking him to formally set apart these grounds to their sacred use by a few appropriate remarks. Write your summary of that section below. Though Lincoln was extremely frustrated with Meade and the Army of the Potomac for failing to pursue Lee's forces in their retreat, he was cautiously optimistic as the year 1863 drew to a close. He also considered it significant that the Union victories at Gettysburg and at Vicksburg under General Ulysses S. Grant had both occurred on the same day, July 4th, the anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. When he received the invitation to make the remarks at Gettysburg, Lincoln saw an opportunity to make a broad statement to the American people on the enormous significance of the war, and he prepared carefully. Though long-running popular legend holds that he wrote the speech on the train while traveling to Pennsylvania, he probably wrote about half of it before leaving the White House on November 18th, and completed writing and revising it that night after talking with Secretary of State William H. Seward, who had accompanied him to Gettysburg. On the morning of November 19th, Everett delivered his 2-hour oration from memory on the Battle of Gettysburg and its significance, and the orchestra played a hymn composed for the occasion by B.B. French. Lincoln then rose to the podium and addressed the crowd of some 15,000 people. He spoke for less than 2 minutes, and the entire speech was only 272 words long. Beginning by invoking the image of the Founding Fathers and the new nation, Lincoln eloquently expressed his conviction that the Civil War was the ultimate test of whether the Union, created in 1776, would survive, or whether it would perish from the earth. The dead at Gettysburg had laid down their lives for this noble cause, he said, and it was up to the living to confront the great task before them, ensuring that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. The essential themes and even some of the language of the Gettysburg Address were not new. Lincoln himself, in his July 1861 message to Congress, had referred to the United States as a democracy, a government of the people by the same people. The radical aspect of the speech, however, began with Lincoln's assertion that the Declaration of Independence, and not the Constitution, was the true expression of the Founding Fathers' intentions for their new nation. At that time, many white slave owners had declared themselves to be true Americans, pointing to the fact that the Constitution did not prohibit slavery. According to Lincoln, the nation formed in 1776 was dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, in an interpretation that was radical at the time but is now taken for granted. Lincoln's historical address redefined the Civil War as a struggle not just for the Union, but also for the principle of human equality. Okay, make sure that you have done summaries for each of these sections. We are going to end it now and start with part 2 in the next video.